Hey folks, Nick here from Another BookTube channel. Today, looking at The Building by Will Eisner. This is a little shameful for me to admit, but despite how much I love comics history and like great cartooning, this is the first Will Eisner book I have ever read. I've never read any of his like the Spirit work, never read Contract with God, just nothing. I don't have an excuse other than I never grabbed anything off of the shelf. I would always pick up something else instead. But this I was able to get at New York Comic Con this past year for $3. I saw a Will Eisner book for $3. It's a complete graphic novel. And I thought, you know what? This is the time. This is the time for me to discover one of the greatest cartoonists of all time. And after reading this, I would say that, I totally see it. I don't know where this book ranks in terms of like his greatest works by any means. Like, I know The Spirit is supposed to be a masterpiece, but this is a really damn good book. And I can see already just from this why Eisner is so respected and beloved. So a lot of influence in here. Rick Veitch, I think, borrowed a lot from Will Eisner, particularly the Gray Shirt series that he did with Alan Moore. But we'll go ahead and we'll flip through this. This is, as it says, the life and death of a city building. So there's a little bit of a forward here from Eisner. Talks about growing up in a big city. He grew up in New York. And the building in question isn't the Flatiron Building, but it's the Flatiron Building. It's that same like corner kind of building. And he talks about how as he grew older and he accumulated memories, he felt like when these older buildings would be torn down and replaced with something new, that it felt like callous, like those old buildings had developed a soul of their own, and that those structures have a personality and they have resonance in the community, and taking them down is a cause for feeling disappointed, or it really feels like you lost a part of your community when one of those old buildings disappears. So this building, this unnamed building at the start here, has been standing for 80 years, and it is being replaced by something new and modern. So when it starts, we see what it looks like as it used to be. We see like the missing tooth in the mouth, that kind of has that feeling. I'm from New York City as well. I'm from Staten Island, but New York City adjacent. And so I've seen stuff like this where there's an empty lot surrounded by skyscrapers, and it does feel very strange. It very much, to me, like, I always had that thought of like, it looks like a missing tooth. And then there's the filling, a new sleek modern building, which my first thought was like, this is exactly what would happen. And there's no personality in a building like this. Whereas this one really is so, it has so much character to it. And the premise of this book is that we're going to follow the life story of four people who would spend a lot of time at the building. The building was integral to their lives. We've got Monroe Mensch, Gilda Green, Antonio Tonati, and P.J. Hammond. And in front of the new building, their ghosts are standing outside. But our first story is of Monroe Mensch, who was a guy who kind of kept to himself, lived quietly. And we're seeing immediately what makes Eisner so unique as a storyteller. Those first few pages, they were full-page splashes. But now we're getting into panels, or rather, lack of panels. There's occasionally stuff that's blocked off in a square, but for the most part, throughout this book, we're going to see just open panels, just images on the page that are placed very specifically. And this is something that's kind of risky. Like, if you're not a master, this can get clunky and ugly and hard to read and out of hand. But at no point during my reading of this book did I ever feel that way. I always knew where to read next. I always knew what direction to read in. I knew what text came, what text came next. And I think that's really a testament to how strong of a storyteller Eisner is, a visual storyteller. Because this is very difficult. Because like this is essentially 3 panels here. And this was the moment where I was reading this and I went, oh my God, this book is different than I thought it was going to be. Because this guy, Monroe mentions, walking outside this building and there's a drive-by shooting at that moment up here. And then we get the push-in close-up of him kind of staying out of the way while this little kid walks in front of him. And the kid catches a stray and dies. And now Monroe is devastated because he spent his life, trying to mind his own business, and in doing so, he didn't like reach out and protect this child. And so now he makes it his life's goal to protect children any way that he can. So he gets a job in the building, working for like this child protective services kind of thing. He helps raise money for them just by outside. He dresses up as Santa one year, and it's not like quite enough. He really wants to do more and more for these kids. He wants to like literally save a child. So he gets like a promotion where he's basically a big brother for an underprivileged youth, and it's this kid Chico, and Chico is in with a bad crowd. They're something with drugs and a gang, and he's trying to protect Chico, but Chico wants nothing to do with him. He's trying to just live his life with this gang. And I marked this page because since Eisner isn't using traditional panels, he finds other ways to break up the page. And this is a really good example of it, where we see like between walls, like walls are splitting up the page, floors, like this looks like they're on a magic carpet. If you're not excellent at what you do, this looks ridiculous. But this all makes a lot of sense. Like this is a panel, 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 and this is a panel. And yet there are no panels. And that's amazing. Like that's so difficult to accomplish. And because this is a book about a building, you'll notice that features of a building are kind of present on almost every page. There's a lot of doorways that people are framed by, or windows, or like just entryways. And we get that here. Like they're walking through this building here, and we have going through this entryway, going through this entryway. Monroe is framed by this entryway as these police are coming in through this one. On the next page, and unfortunately, Chico also dies because he gets shot by the police during this drugs bust. But Monroe persisted. He still wants to help kids. He does a house call for this one. The kid is being abused by his parents. And again, we have framed by door, framed by door, framed by door, the door there. And he gets knocked out by the parent. So Monroe keeps going, trying to do his best to save kids. And he's really a bad luck charm because kids keep dying in front of him. This one gets hit by a car. He's watching them play basketball one day. The kid needs a blood transfusion to help him with his blood loss. Monroe volunteers, and because he's so old, he dies from the transfusion, and also the kid does not make it through either. And that's the end of the Monroe story. It's so depressing. All right, now we're at Gilda Green is the next story, and she is has a romance that's connected to the building for basically her entire life, starting in high school. She starts dating this poet, Benny the poet, and they meet at the outside the building, and they have their little dates. But as they're getting older, she needs to marry someone else because Benny doesn't make any money as a poet, and she needs someone who can like take care of her in the very most basic ways, which is understandable. So she accepts a proposal from a dentist, someone else, and look at how just crazy these backgrounds are. Like this one, like this is all just straight vertical lines just all over. There's trees, this car. This is nothing. This is just creating depth on the page, like standing on flat black plains. Again, those magic carpets. Just really like ballsy kind of cartooning. But Gilda marries a dentist. Things are going really well. He's buying her everything that she really wants. However, she does still love Benny, and they will meet at the building and continue on a love affair through the years. Unfortunately, one day, her husband does catch them. He does walk by and see them. And this begins a situation where now the husband also starts going behind her back. And now they're just cheating on each other with, whoever they want. Another sequence where framed by an entryway, framed by a window, framed by a window, framed by a door, going through the door, coming through the door. A lot of that kind of framing device. This is a different one. This is like a cupboard where they're being framed by it. The marriage is dissolving. This spread here is wild to me, because this is another one where it's just like the background is just these long vertical lines that indicate kind of nothing, and then the images are just placed within the page itself to create. The panels are created by where the vertical lines end, and then this panel here is created by the door itself again. And then this one I think is awesome because they are in bed together, and their positioning in the bed tells you like who's speaking and when. Like it flows like him, her, him, her, him, her, him, her, him, her, him. Like the way that they're staggered, it just flows. It's perfect. It's so good. It's so smart. And this kind of unconventional page layout is why I say like Rick Veitch or Stephen Bissette were very influenced by Eisner, because they would borrow stuff like this. They would do stuff like this in their work throughout the years. Benny and Gilda are getting older, but they still continue to meet outside the building. One day, Gilda fails to appear, and it's because she has passed away. And that's the end of her story. Benny still will go to the building just to hang around for the memories. Very sad, very bittersweet. We're on to Antonio Tonati, who is a musician. As a child, showed talent with the piano, but parents couldn't afford a piano, got him a violin instead. And he was a very serviceable violin player, but not enough to make a career out of it. And so he would perform at like birthdays, anniversaries, funerals, but yet never able to make a living from it. I think this is a great page. I don't know. I don't know a lot about like drawing like perspective and stuff, but I love the fact that just like this is on a little bit of an angle. Like I just think that this to me, this perspective looks great. As Antonio looks down at the kids who get to play sports while he has to practice his violin. He takes up, construction work to pay the bills, more framed by windows. Even this kind of creates a window kind of look. And because this motif is so persistent, this visual motif, whenever we do get a square panel, it makes you feel like you are looking in through a window, even when there's not one present. Antonio has an accident. He can no longer work in construction. He likes to hang outside the building and play his violin. He doesn't do it for money. He just does it to try to cheer people up. We even see Gilda and Benny, who are enjoying their love affair with his music in the background. And if we go back, we do actually see him, right there. So set up these characters kind of weaving in and out of each other's lives. Here's another example where Monroe is having a bad day with his little shoulders slumped. He hears the music. He finds the resolve to continue to walk on. And that like posture change, like this is something else to note throughout this, is Eisner's incredible at just capturing body language and creating different looking characters. Like every single background character looks different from each other. In this, the way Antonio's story ends is just that he keeps playing outside the building. when the new building is built, he just dies. So that's that. PJ Hammond, a real estate tycoon who inherits his father's business. Father was ruthless and kind of beat out PJ's like liberal leanings. Initially, PJ comes out of college thinking that they have a responsibility to the neighborhood, whereas his dad tells him, "Nope, we have a responsibility to make money," and that's what PJ becomes and turns into once he takes over. He's got this portrait of his father that looms over him throughout the story. To show his influence on him. And PJ's goal is to basically buy up every building on this block. The last domino to fall is the building, and the owners won't sell it to him. They are standing just like stalwart. They won't do it. And so he's trying to just make them offers and offers over years and years, and they're just not going through it. I marked this page because it's just another really good example of Eisner structuring the pages to kind of be like stories in a building, like first story, second story, third story, fourth story, with the building facade on the right side here to kind of frame it. But again, there's not motion here. They're not walking down, and there's no panel breaks, but you could tell this is a panel, this is a panel, this is a panel, and it's all taking place in the same spot. Just really unique storytelling. The years go by, and PJ is desperate to get this building. I like this panel a lot. A little bit, you get the light where he's standing in the rain, looking at the building, which is mostly washed out in these rain droplets, but with a little bit of illumination left. And eventually, PJ calls in a favor. He calls in somebody from the building inspectors guild or whatever, and basically tells him, "Hey, I've put a lot of money in your pocket over the years, so what you're going to do for me is you're going to cite this building for a ton of inspection violations, and then rather than the cost of repairing those violations is going to be way too much, and so the owners will sell to me rather than pay for those." And it works. He gets the building, but the citations that he forced the building inspector to put in place don't go away. Like he can't just snap his fingers and have it disappear from the records. So he still has to pay for all of the repairs. But now he's going broke because he's been neglecting his other business, the other buildings. They've had to sell off a lot of the other buildings to try to just keep this one afloat. And eventually he agrees. His business associates tell him, like, "Look, we'll sell the building, but we're going to name it the Hammond Building, so it'll always be, your family's building. Your legacy will live on." So he finally agrees to do it. He is broken down over the years, and he disposes of himself out from a tall window, and that's what made him a ghost today. So we're back to our story framing device. We got the 4 ghosts outside of the new Hammond Building, and this window washer. His seat snaps, and he starts falling from the sky, and all of the ghosts contribute to saving people who are in danger because of this. So Monroe finally gets to save a child. The window washer's bucket fell where he was standing, would have killed him, but Monroe, his ghost, is able to pull him out of the way. Benny sees Gilda's ghost, and while he runs towards her, he pushes this guy out of the way of the falling squeegee. The window washer himself lands on this on the sign, the building sign, the Hammond sign, and PJ Hammond helps hold the sign up because it would be too weak to hold him on his own. So he helps to save him there and hold him up. But he's still struggling, the window washer. He's panicking. And so Antonio comes in with his violin and plays some soothing music, which relaxes him and gives him time to hang in there for the firefighters to come and rescue him. It's a miracle. Everyone is saved, and the crowd returns to normal in front of the building. And we close with the sentiment, now the new building begins its life, accumulating its own lore, until someday it too will be torn down and replaced by another. Another thing I just want to point out is Eisner does a lot of this free-floating text. I think his lettering is phenomenal. I think this is incredibly beautiful lettering. And that on its own is just a joy to look at throughout. I think that's another thing. That's something that is hard for me to notice sometimes. I lose sight of how important lettering is. But this stuff looks great. It's really great from start to finish. And I love this book. I really did. If you, I don't know if this is still in print, but if you find a copy, pick it up. This is great, and I definitely cannot wait to read more Will Eisner stuff. If you have a recommendation for where I should start with Eisner, or where I should continue, rather, let me know in the comments below. Thank you for spending some time with me today, but now it's time to get back to reading.